All right, let me tell you why I did that, right? Because I was watching this video. I was watching this video on thumbnails and all this stuff on you when you're a YouTube content creator. And they were saying in the video that when your mouse scrolls over like the video feed, it'll just start playing it, whether it's on your phone or your computer, whatever, right? So in this video, they were saying that the first 5 seconds of your video are going to be what drives people to look at it. So that's why I was doing all that stuff at the beginning, because people won't have any idea what in the world is this dude doing. All right, let's have this conversation. So 2 days ago, I received a text. I'm on sabbatical right now from my church. I come back. My first Sunday back will be September 10th. So a couple days ago, I got a notification saying, hey, check this out. And it was a trailer for a movie called The Book of Clarence. At that point, I didn't know anything about it except it was just called The Book of Clarence. And they said, thoughts. One of my thoughts. These are members of my church. Love these people. So they said thoughts. So I watched the trailer and I thought, interesting. And so I just responded back. And this is just after one watch, no other information. Here's what I responded back. I said, I don't know, fam. Looks like a mockery of the gospel to me. Woo, 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 woo. And let me tell you why I said that. Because from the trailer, there's a guy who apparently is Clarence, who wants to have the power that Jesus has, wants to be like Jesus and have the prestige. And it reminded me of Simon the magician. Remember that dude who got saved? And I think it was Acts 8. He was a magician. He got saved. He was baptized. And when the power of the Holy Spirit was working in people, remember he went to Peter and was like, hey, can I pay to have that power? And Peter crushed him. Simon, there's evil in you, and you better repent. I mean, he acted like this dude didn't just commit his life to Christ a couple of verses earlier, right? So that's where my mind went initially on this idea. And then as I was thinking more about it, and then I just happened to do a little research, and I realized that 2 days ago, Jay-Z, who hasn't posted on Instagram in over 2 years, is the one who posted this trailer. Then I did some more investigation and find out that Jay-Z is an actual producer of this film, The Book of Clarence. And then I read 2 articles, one from Billboard, but it kept quoting a lot from a Vanity Fair article. So I read the Vanity Fair article and I read what the director of the video said and some quotes from Jay-Z. I'll read some of that and let's talk about this. I already know they're going to be Christian content creators who are going to call the movie satanic, and the cast is largely black, so it's going to be called woke, all this stuff. Let me give you perspective, at least for what it's worth, how I'm processing stuff like this. But before we do that, let's make sure we do what we do. I'm Kirk Kennedy. Welcome to CNN. Let's go in. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. That's what I do. Expose whatever I see. I don't care if it's left, right, middle, whatever. All right. And last but certainly not least, if you haven't heard this album yet, that's everywhere, actually, you know what? You probably shouldn't. All right. Let's get to the reality here of what's happening. All right. So Vanity Fair covered this. There's a couple different references, different websites, but Vanity Fair pretty much says that the guy who made the black Western, The Holiday Fall, which I thought actually was tough. It was a tough Western. I like the slow-mo. He kind of has that, Michael, what's the guy who does Transformers and like, Miami, the Bad Boys, all that slow motion, type, where you slide the camera over and it's slow motion, and Michael something. Somebody's going to know. Somebody may be watching live stream and know who this is, right? So this is, all right, Michael Bay. Thank you. Yes. Stephanie to the rescue. Michael Bay. Michael Bay does all that stuff. So this guy did that in a Western that largely featured black people, right? And I like that kind of stuff. So I thought The Holiday Fall was an interesting, I'm not recommending it, but I saw it. Just because I saw it doesn't mean you should. I saw it. So I thought it was all right. So here's what he says about the movie. He says, this is the same guy who directed that movie, a British filmmaker. His name is J. Samuels, all right? Here's what he said. I wanted to tell a Bible story about an everyman, right? I also wanted to explore the Bible story from the angle of the person that sells Jesus' sandals, the woman, or that owns the hair salon, right? So essentially he's saying, I wanted to tell a Bible story from just a different point of view. You ever watch those point of view movies where it's from the person on the street and then the main character and then the person who was up in the window? Like, he's just saying, I wanted to pick the most obscure person because most of the stories are told through first-hand knowledge or second-hand knowledge, but let's just pick somebody who was just in the crowd watching. So he wants to tell a story about this type of person and develop that. Now, there are some things that he said in this interview that I thought are going to cause some people to be like, man, this joint is crazy, right? And he said this, well, about being black and about largely being a black cast, for those of you that are quick to call it woke, let's just be clear real quick, because I've seen this a lot. When Chloe Bailey was asked to be Little Mermaid, right? And there were people from Ben Shapiro, all these people like Hollywood's going woke. Let's just be clear. I actually did a video on this a couple months back. I'm going to make a playlist because people have been asking me for a playlist, and I haven't done a playlist yet because I've been playing around with making a playlist. I'm going to make the playlist. But here's the reality. People who are not black have been doing it. 10 Commandments. Charlton Heston isn't Egyptian. He's not an Israelite. That's one of the greatest movies in Hollywood, right? The 10 Commandments. That joint, none of them people was white. They wasn't. So it happens all the time. You're only woke when you're black, right? It's just funny to me. Same thing I said about Trump. Isn't it funny right now that the justice system is corrupt? From the conservatives, the justice system is corrupt because it's indicted Trump. But black people have been saying that for the longest time. But when we say that, we're woke. You can't make this stuff up. But that's for a different video. All right. So here's his point on The Harder They Fall. Here's why he has an all-black cast. As if that's not what Hollywood has done on the other side. I don't think it has to do with being woke. It's just who you want to work with, right? But anyway, it could be woke. But here's what he says. Most of the stories told in the Old West didn't include people of color. We know they existed. We know we've been here just as long as anyone else, says Jay-Z. So he's talking about The Harder They Fall and the justification for making a film with a largely black cast. Of course they weren't. Those people didn't look black like that. These people were Israelites. They weren't black. They didn't look like us, right? Jesus did not like, despite people trying to act like this is black Jesus. Well, he ain't look white either, right? That Jesus has done more damage than good. But he ain't black either. But the point wasn't they're trying to be woke. They're just like, hey, look, black people existed. We wanted to work with a black cast. That's essentially what he's saying. But here's some stuff that will make most Christians be a little concerned. This is kind of cringy right here, right? Here's what he says. Samuels says, this is a full of witty dialogue, winking humor, plus fantastical moments that allow his protagonist to explore faith on many levels in what Samuels calls a relatable journey of self-belief and world discovery. He adds, I think a lot of us have the issue of not only outside belief, but inside belief. So that's going to make most believers be like self-belief, cringe and all that stuff, right? And then he talks a little bit about the protagonist, Clarence, in the movie. He says, Clarence is the person that doesn't believe in anything outside of what's in front of him, what he can see and hear, says Samuel. Clarence has a lot of inside belief. He has a lot of inside confidence. This man is sure he could fly. He reminds me of growing up, but unlike me, he has no outside faith. So this guy grew up in the home. He's a man of faith. Here's another thing that's going to make some people, Christians, struggle with seeing this. It says the book of Clarence has some deep cut references to biblical characters and storylines that even a moderately well-versed Christian might not be aware of. Okay. And then now here's why that's a problem. Because that's not a problem in the grand scheme, right? Many of you listen to sermons, you read commentaries, and you get information that you wouldn't have known by just reading the Bible. In and of itself, that's not a big deal. That there may be things we're not be well versed in. But here's what he says after that in the article. At least this is what it says. It makes it like, it says Samuel said he didn't have to do much research on the actual Bible stories. Just being black, you grow up in a house where you go to church on Sundays, he says. I think if you grow up in the hood, you were inundated with Bible stories. He did, however, do research on the more minuscule aspects of everyday life during that time, like what sort of currency they used and where people would get their head on. So you're going to recreate a Bible story off of just how you grew up. Oh, that's suspect. What my kids say, that's sus. It's cringy, right? I don't know how you say, hey, if you grew up in the hood, you know the Bible. Because if you look at the hood, the majority of people aren't living according to them Bible stories. So it doesn't matter what you heard. It didn't penetrate, fam. And what you heard might not have been the right thing. But I digress. That's not the point of this today's thing. And here's what Jay-Z said. Jay-Z said, my fear is that people don't allow that arc to take place and are immediately judging. He notes he's been on call with studio execs where someone will accidentally call it a faith-based movie, but faith is only a backdrop, he says, Jay-Z. This story is about a young man who finds his faith through love and through wanting to become somebody in the world, which is a story of everybody. Everybody wants to find love and all of that. And he wants to do it in a positive way, right? All right. So the trailer looks like it's a guy who's going to pretend like he's Jesus in order to get the accolades. A lot of selfish ambition is what we would call that, biblically speaking. All right. Here's where most people are going to struggle with saying this is satanic. And let's be clear. When we say satanic, this is what we typically mean. All right. In the scriptures, in Matthew 16, a crazy scene happens. Jesus is walking with his disciples and he's explaining to them that he's going to die. And then Peter says something and this happens. So let me read this. Here we go. Matthew 16, beginning in verse 21. From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man. All right, so let's just be clear what just happened. Peter, who loves Jesus, is walking with Jesus and the other disciples. Jesus is telling them, I'm going to be killed and raised on the third day. Peter says, no, Lord, far be it from you. This shall never happen to you. Now let's think about for a second. Why would Peter say that? Peter loves the Lord. He's been walking with the Lord at that point in the story, probably for 2 years now. At that point in the biblical narrative, maybe 2 years, maybe a little longer than 2 years. Peter's been living with Jesus every day. He loves the Lord. His intention was probably because I love you and don't want anything to happen to you, right? So he says, far be it from you, Lord, that you would die, basically, be crucified, be killed by these Romans, right? But Jesus says to Peter, he says this, get behind me, Satan. Now, we have no exegetical evidence, no credibility that Satan entered Peter like it says Satan entered Judas at the Last Supper. We have no credibility. Jesus wasn't saying Peter is Satan. What he was saying was any thought, even if it's well-intentioned, but disagrees with the will of God, is satanic. All right? That's a crazy thought. That Peter, even though Peter loved the Lord knows that Peter didn't do that because he didn't love him, but he was using what Peter did as a teaching moment that said every thought that does not conform to the will of God, that is outside of the will of God, is satanic. For God, it's not there's no gray areas, right? If you're either doing the will of God in your thinking or you're not, it's satanic. So he calls Peter Satan. All right. So this, easily you could say this film looks like it could be satanic. And that's where a lot of believers are going to go. This is going to be terrible. This is this and that, without just from the trailer. So let me give you two thoughts to help you process this. All right. These are going to be, right? Two thoughts to process these kinds of movies and what we see in the culture, particularly when it comes to things about Jesus, like things about Christ, right? I had the same thought a couple years ago, and I'll explain why in a minute. Let me give you two thoughts, right? The first thought is this. As a Christian, as a believer, as a fear of the Lordian, we don't look to Hollywood to give us accurate theology from movies. Like, can we for a moment, right? Talking to believers, if you're not a believer, thanks for watching. You're not going to resonate with this because you don't really care about the things that we care about. But I appreciate you watching. Give me a thumbs up anyway. And by all means, go pick up the album. It'll help you. All right. To my fellow believers, right? We don't look to Hollywood to give us accurate theology. I will be honest. It is a rare occasion. I mean, the rarest of occasions that I've looked at a movie based on a biblical story, a biblical book of the Bible, especially Jesus, that I felt like has been accurate. A handful that I could think like, wow, that moved me emotionally. To most of them are not. And let me tell you why a lot of them don't, is because many of them don't even stick to the Bible, right? They will use what we would call, if you're a Protestant, right? If you're Catholic, then you have certain books in your Bible that we don't. They would use what we would call the Apocrypha, like, and pseudepigrapha, all right? Apocrypha are books of the Bible that are in the Catholic Bible that are basically Jewish history. They are books not written by any prophet associated with God in the Old Testament, so we don't put those in our Bible. The pseudepigrapha are books that can be attributed to people in the Bible, but we don't know who wrote them. It's like the Book of Enoch, which is actually quoted a couple times in the New Testament. So they saw the Book of Enoch to some degree as credible. It's not canon to us. It's not in the 66 books, right? So that we're not going to get that. Most of the Hollywood movies we see, they use pseudepigrapha and apocrypha as their narrative, not the Bible that we use. So you'll watch a movie and be like, what in the world is this? And it's because you haven't read the Book of Enoch. You haven't read the Book of Giants. You haven't read the genealogy of Adam and Eve. You haven't read the Book of Moses. You haven't read some of the pseudepigrapha books that they will rely heavily on. So we don't look to Hollywood to give us accurate theology from movies, right? We don't look to Hollywood for that. And I think sometimes when believers are so upset at a portrayal by people who are largely unbelievers, it's the real issue is not what are they doing. The real issue could be, man, I was hoping for validation of my faith through this. And I think, listen, if Jesus is right, which I think he is, he says stuff like this in his word, John 15:18-27. If the world hates you, remember that it hated me first, right? Paul tells Timothy in 2 Timothy 3:12, I'm going to do a separate video on this verse for a different reason, but he says this, indeed, this is 2 Timothy 3:12, indeed, all who desire to live a godly life will be persecuted. This is the word of God. All who desire to live a godly life will be. So, we shouldn't be looking to Hollywood to validate our faith. Celebrity, anyone to validate your faith. In fact, your faith should be so secure that if the rest of the world said, I don't believe in Jesus anymore, then you're the last one standing. Because I know that's where I'm at. At least that's what I believe to be true. I tell my boys all the time, sons, I love you to death. And I pray that you believe in the Lord. But if you grow up and reject them, I'm not going to, just because you lose faith or you lost faith. I'm not going to do it. As much as I love my kids, I'm not going to compromise because I love my kids. That's not love if I compromise what I believe. If I compromise Christ, there's no love in that, right? So we don't get accurate theology from movies. And I think we shouldn't look to people like a Jay-Z. Who cares we don't get it from that. But here's the more important point I want to make, and I'm closing with this. Here's the more important point. We have to stop acting like Jesus is a punk. Okay? Let me explain what I mean by this. We wouldn't say this functionally. We don't form these words in our cognitive mind that Jesus is a punk. But we act like Jesus is a punk. Oh no, someone's making a movie that's going to mock Jesus and we need to push back against it. Man, Jesus said in Matthew 12, 36 and 37, he said this in Matthew 12, every word against the Son of Man will be forgiven. Right? Every word, every blasphemy against the Son of Man will be forgiven. Against the Holy Spirit, it won't be. Right? Jesus is not a punk, fam. We don't need to overreact and be like, oh no, some influencer said this about Jesus. No, that's more about us. We don't want to be persecuted for our faith, so we're hoping and pushing back against any negative thing that people say about our faith. Man, my God is not a punk. My God is the gangster. Like, let me tell you what's gangster. When the world sins against you and angels leave heaven and come to earth and have sex with women, you decide to kill almost everybody by water. My God is gangster, fam. My God will be like, okay, these people who I saved and who I told to believe in me are disrespecting me by unbelief. So I'm going to have serpents just come through and bite them. And when they get bit, in order for them not to die, they have to look at the serpent that I put up on the stick. My God is gangster. My God can open the ground up and have people get swallowed up in it, right? My God can become a human being, walk the earth, allow himself to be brutally beaten, killed, come back from the dead on his own, and when he comes back, a bunch of other people come back from the dead, walk the earth for some time, and then leave, rise up, leave, and then send his spirit and change the world. Slim, stop acting like Jesus is a punk and that we gotta defend him and push back against everything. Man, please. Isaiah 66, 1 and 2. God said, heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool, fam. Now, if you consider Satan is the ruler of this world, which the Bible does say, Satan, based on Isaiah 66, 1 and 2, Satan, who we're so freaked out about, is the ruler of God's footstool. He said, the earth is my footstool. Satan is prince of the earth, ruler of this world. It's on God's footstool. At this church I used to go to back in the day when I first got saved, Christ Church, they used to sing this song, when things are over our head, they're under his feet, under his feet. Stop treating your Lord like a punk, fam. He's not like, oh no, if this movie comes out and blasphemes me, people won't believe. Oh no, if this celebrity says he believes in me, but then stops, all the people will be influenced badly. And the Lord is not up there tripping, right? He's not a punk. We have to stop treating Jesus like a punk. If this movie is blasphemous, so what? There's a ton of things that have been blasphemous, man, and way worse than this. And guess what? Jesus is still king. All right, so lastly, biblically, how should you process this biblically? I think Paul said it best in Philippians 1. Here's what Paul said. Some indeed preach Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. Said the latter do it out of love, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. The former proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment. This is what he says. What then? Only that in every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. Listen, when Kanye West became a believer, I was excited for him more than anything. And then when he did his album, Jesus is King, I was like, cool. People was dogging him. I said, listen, man, don't dog the dude. Let him explore his faith. But you know what? I didn't really, when I say this, I don't mean I didn't care genuinely about his soul. But if he was a fake, which we just still don't, it remains to be seen, he kind of wilded out. What happened to Kanye? You know how much attention was given to the name of Christ? Even if he fizzled out, all them Sunday services, everyone was talking about Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. His name was being talked about. It was being magnified. And it was of the most the dude who used to call himself Jesus, right? All of a sudden now he's talking about, believe it. I was like, hey, I'm loving it. Not so much because, oh, Kanye West gives me validation, but because whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed. And I was excited to talk about that. Ironically, his big brother, if you know Kanye West music, Big Brother is my big brother. That's Jay-Z, Big Brother, right? That's off the, I think, Late Registration album. I know my hip hop. We don't talk about hip hop a lot, but I'm him. All right. Jay-Z calls himself Jehovah, right? So you got Jesus became a believer and proclaimed Jesus Christ all over the place for a couple years. You got Jehovah, who takes his name from Jehovah. I'm the God of rap, all that. Now he's producing a movie that has to do with Jesus. Fam, listen. Jay-Z is one of the most iconic figures in this country. Even if this movie is a hot mess, as some of you would say, or if it's mid, like my boys would say, my kids talk in this language, or if you're from DC to DMV and you old enough like me and you say this movie was Bamified, right? Even if all of that is true, guess what? People are going to be thinking about Jesus. And it's going to give all of us, instead of complaining about the accuracy of it, let's use it as mission. Let's have conversation. Hey, what'd you think of that? Did you see the Book of Clarence? What'd you think of it? Hey, what'd you think of it? Well, it wasn't an accurate portrayal of Jesus, but there were things that we can use that. We get so caught up in fighting and being afraid of what people will think of our faith that we forget who we talking about. Like, we can use this movie, comes out January 2024. I'm going to use this as a talking point. I want to have conversations with people. I hope people watch it. And I hope people talk. It's Jay-Z. People are going to talk about it, right? Christ's name is going to be proclaimed, whether in pretense or in truth. So if you faking, if it's selfish ambition or godly ambition, I just want people talking about Christ. And you and I, as believers, need to stop being the theology police for Hollywood. Don't worry about that. Even if it's whack, it's an opportunity for you and I to have conversations with people about the real Jesus. And apparently, from what I'm hearing, the dude Clarence actually puts his faith in Jesus in the movie. I don't know if it's a mockery of Jesus as the Messiah as much as it's a dude who's trying to have faith in himself and realizes, I can't do it. I got to put my faith in Jesus. That's what it sounds like they're aiming at. But even if it doesn't, once again, for those of us that believe, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is proclaimed, and in that I rejoice. So look, it could be satanic. I'm sure it probably is. Jay-Z has no faith that I'm aware of. None of it. But man, if you're making a movie, God uses this type of stuff. People are going to be talking about Jesus again. First it was Kanye in 2019. Now Jay-Z 2024. And who knows what conversations are going to happen as a result of this that may lead some people to salvation that would not even happen if people weren't buzzing about Jesus in a movie that depicts him. All the conservatives are going to be like, oh, it's woke, it's all black, as if all white movies haven't been done by and acted by people who weren't those ethnicities. Don't fall into that, right? This isn't about being woke. This is about being right or left. I ain't on the woke left and I ain't with the sleep right. This is about, is there an opportunity from this movie that we can have conversations with people that we might otherwise be afraid to have? That's what we should be thinking. So please, don't look to Hollywood to give us accurate theology. And please stop treating Jesus like a punk. The God we serve is not like, oh my gosh, people are not going to believe in me if they... Man, he's not tripping. He knows who are his. The earth is his footstool. Do you really think he's worried about a Hollywood portrayal of him? But what do I know? I didn't go to the gym today, and I'm sorry. I didn't feel like it, but I'm getting back. All right. I got other stuff to talk about. I'm up, but I got to get out of here, man. I got to get out of here. All right, y'all. Take it. Hey, look, don't forget to like and subscribe. And man, oh man, would y'all support your boy? Well, actually, some of you, depending on how you are, you should probably heed the warning of the music. Shouldn't listen. But for those of you that do, listen, we're all supposed to be humble, right? But I don't think it's wrong to say, I think this is one of the best albums of the year. I've listened to a lot of music. If you think I'm wrong, listen to the album, you stream it everywhere and tell me. But I'm don't look at me and you see this and you get seen as a certain way. No, I rap. I've been rapping since back before Jay-Z. I'm with him. Or maybe not because he's older than me. But I can rap. Check out this album. Support your boy. Like and subscribe to the channel. Let's keep the party going. And I will see y'all. I might do another one later today, actually. But if not, definitely tomorrow. All right, y'all? Grace and peace.